The maintenance of drainage ditches is also an important part of the maintenance of the roadways. If the ditches aren't adequately sized for the drainage, a couple of bad things can happen to your roads. The first is the flow rate can be high enough that it will actually erode away the road bed. And we've all seen pictures of roads that were washed out during floods. But even if it doesn't erode away the road bed, it can compromise the integrity of the road bed because a flooding condition will cause the water to be absorbed by the soil underneath the road itself. And so what you'll have is a softening of the subgrade and the base material. Now you'll notice this first is a soft spot in the road, a dip as you drive over it. But that will continue to progress as the traffic goes by, and eventually you'll have to come in and tear the road bed up, put in new base material, new subgrade, compact it, and then either asphalt it or put gravel down or whatever you're using for the road bed surface. And we want to eliminate that from happening. So we do that with adequately sized drainage ditches. Now, something else can happen if they're not adequately sized. Depending on the erosion rate during rains and flooding situations, the ditches can very quickly fill up with silt, sand, or other material. If they fill up too quickly, then we're back to a flooding situation and you'll have the problems we just described. So it's important to have the ditches adequately sized, and it's important to have them clear and cleaned out. And the motor grader, of course, is the piece of equipment that we typically do that with. Now, in our last video, we talked about how to cut a V-ditch and demonstrated that. In this video, we're going to talk about the flat bottom ditch. Now, the flat bottom ditch is a better option if you have the right of way to install it, because it takes more room, therefore you're going to excavate more soil, and you have to do something with that soil. So you have to make sure that there's adequate right of way to cut a flat bottom ditch. But if you can, it offers these advantages. The first is it has a much higher flow capacity, so you can flow more water, and if floods and flash floods are a situation that you have to deal with, flat bottom ditches are definitely your friend in that case. Not only will they hold a higher volume of water, but they'll also hold a higher volume of silt and other sediment that may flood into the ditches. So you have more time to come back and do clean out than you would with a V-ditch, which will fill up very quickly because of its obvious V shape. It doesn't take much to fill up the bottom in a hurry. Also, a flat bottom ditch slows the rate of flow of the water, so it doesn't have the same force of erosion, if you will. If you think about a saw blade moving very quickly, it will cut very quickly. Water does the same thing. If it's moving fast, it will cut into the road bed and cut into the ditch bottom quickly. If it's flowing more slowly, it won't tend to do that as quickly, so you get more life out of the ditch. So there are many advantages to doing a flat bottom ditch if you have the right of way to do that. We'll be demonstrating how to do that in this video.
One of the things you want to do as you start is make a marking pass, and you can make the marking pass with either the heel or the toe of the blade. I've known experienced operators that used either one. You want to make your pass shallow enough that you don't get side draft off your blade, and you want to get your pass to where you can mark where you want the center of your ditch to be, where you can, as you make your pass, that you can get it lined out. Once you get your marking pass done, you want to go back and start on cutting your V-ditch. You can either do this with the toe of the blade and carry your dirt toward the back slope, or you can come in with the heel of the blade and start lowering your V down to the depth you want it to be, looking for the grade, and that'll give you enough grade to carry the water that the ditch is going to need to carry. There's a couple of different ways you can work on a V-ditch. You can go ahead and cut the front slope down to the depth you want it, or you can cut it and work the front and back basically at the same time. It really, personal preference, I kind of like to work them both at the same time because you can go ahead and start moving your dirt out of the bottom of your ditch. If you get too much there, then that's when you run into the problem with the machine trying to slip sideways on you. And it's hard to make a cut and move your excess dirt from the other pass, from the front slope up the back slope if you wait and get too much there at one time. As you go ahead and start your cleanup and moving the dirt away from it, if you'll articulate the rear of the machine away from the discharge side and then lean the front tires toward the discharge side, it'll make your machine a little more stable. When you articulate away, it puts the tandems directly behind the part of the moldboard that has the most pressure on it, and you end up with a little less side slip on it. If you're working on clay materials or stuff that's extremely sticky or slick, sometimes that'll help you give you a little more stability with your machine. What we're doing here is we're going ahead and taking our excess material and scattering it out on the back slope. We're beginning to get it spread out and work the grass to an extent where we don't end up with our grass all wadded up in one spot, and getting our material scattered to where we can have it in a location we'll eventually be able to leave it. We're just going ahead and putting a little more depth in our V-ditch here, bringing it down. Also working on making sure we've got our slope on our front slope, something that's not going to be too steep for the traffic, and yet it's going to be steep enough to give us the depth that we'll need on our V-ditch. Once you get the approximate depth you're going to need for your V-ditch, it's always a good idea to go back and get your slope exactly like you want it on your front slope. And also it'll help clean up the bottom of your ditch and get the dirt up there where you can start moving it out of the way and be ready to make your second V-cut. You'll need to go back and get what you cleaned up, and then you'll be ready to start your second V. Once you get your front slope and your depth about like you like it, it's a good idea to go back and try to make the back slope match what you've got and get any excess material out of the way, but it also gives a closer approximation of the angle and slope you've got on the front slope on the back slope, and it makes it easier to work with. Once you get your depth on your V-ditch to the desired depth, then you can actually move over a little bit, start cutting a second V. If you're working on loam soils or sandy soils, you can take a pretty wide cut. If you're on heavy clay soils like we've got here, you're going to have to make pretty small V's and not take out a bunch at one time. It cause you too much side slip and create its own problems. So your soil type will vary a bunch on how long and how much effort you have to take to get your second V cut. As you get your soil or material out of the way, then you can go ahead and start moving over and widening your V out to where you're working to have several V's cut down to the same depth. Once you get those done, you can widen it out to where you've got either 2 or 3 or even 4 V's cut to give you the depth and the width that you're looking for when you eventually get to the point where you can clean out your flat bottom ditch. You can see here that we've got the first V cut and we've cut the second V, giving us a little more width, and we're working now toward cutting a third V to widen our ditch out and still try to maintain the same grade down the hill where our water will drain back toward the culvert, but also give a chance to widen it out to give it more area for our water to flow in. If you're working a long ditch, you're going to turn around at each end and you have your dirt carrying it both ways. This is a shorter stretch between two curves, and I worked a lot of the dirt from one end coming up. But at some point, if you're going to get your dirt scattered out along the whole range of your ditch, you're going to need to turn around and carry part of the dirt back in the direction you worked that. So here I turned around and we're starting to carry the dirt back down and scattered out where we've got give us a little more room to get our excess material scattered on the back slope, not have it in the way. You can see here we're beginning to start another V, which is going to give us close to the width we're going to need to get our flat bottom ditch in. The challenge on a ditch like this is keep the back slope at about the same angle as the front slope, and yet work your material out further away from the bottom of the ditch. If you can make your moldboard angle to work where you can drop your material either in between the deals or else carry it plumb out far enough to drop it outside the tandem, it makes it a lot easier to maintain a good smooth grade. And it's a lot easier on the operator and the machine not to be bouncing across the material to dropping out from underneath the moldboard. Once you get your V's to the width that you think you're going to need, it's a good idea to go back and make one final pass on the front slope to clean up any loose material and to dress your grade back up, because if it works like it's supposed to, your front slope will be completely through after this pass, and then you can come back and set the machine up to put your moldboard underneath it and cut the V's out of the bottom of the ditch, moving the excess material toward the back slope. What we've done is we've pulled the saddle pin and we've articulated the machine, and by shifting the moldboard to the side, we've pulled a 14-foot moldboard in and put it completely underneath the machine. If you're a new operator, it's a good idea to have a spotter on the ground, because there's several things that can go wrong when you pull a moldboard up underneath the machine. It's pretty easy to put either the toe or the heel into the tire, or you can actually get the the heel of the blade that's up under the machine into the frame or into some of the hydraulic lines if you're not careful. So if you're not used to the machine or you're a new operator, it's a good idea to have a spotter while you're putting the moldboard up underneath the machine. You can pull them up into 3 foot directly under there with a 14-foot moldboard, which is a pretty narrow ditch for a 14-foot blade. Normally you don't want to run on your windrow, but when you're making your cleanup pass here, if you'll run the left front tire on the edge of that windrow, it helps clean it out a little better. And if you can get it just right, it mashes it down just enough that you can pull the excess material that you just cut out of your flat bottom ditch and pull it up on the back slope. And then you can drop it up there and then come back and scatter it. What I've done here is I didn't really like the bottom of my ditch and didn't have it cleaned out quite as well as I wanted to. So starting on the uphill side and coming back, I went ahead and articulated the machine again, shifted the moldboard to the side, put it back up into the machine and made one more pass to make sure my bottom of my ditch was cleaned out as well as I wanted to. If you do it right the first time, then you don't have to come back and make the second pass here. But I thought I could do better, and so I made another pass here, and you can see coming out from behind the moldboard there, that's a flatter bottom ditch than what I had to begin with. I didn't get quite deep enough in the pass when I was in the bottom of the ditch coming uphill, and I didn't get my V's completely cut out. You want to cut it down to a good solid bottom and get all your V's and your loose material out, and then you can come back and take the toe of the blade and pull it back up the hill like I did on the pass a while ago. Once you get your dirt out of the ditch, it's always a good idea to go back and dress up the back slope where you get your spring rains and you begin to get your grass up there that your mowers can get in and out and you won't have a problem with it, and you don't want to leave a bunch of large clods. And as you get that cleaned up then you're ready to go ahead and go on to your next project.
Now this is too large a topic to cover in a video of this length, but if you would like more information or training, the University of Texas at Arlington LTAP program would be more than happy to help you. Please feel free to call us at the information provided below on the screen.